following announcement has been paid for by the Celtic World Order.
Hello there, welcome back to Celtic World Order. As always, I'm Steve O'Matt. It's an absolute pleasure to have you back here with us on the channel once again for another brand new video. In this case, it's a wee evening update because, as we know, we always find ourselves at the end of the week. That means one thing and one thing only. We get the press conferences, we get to hear from the manager, we get to hear from a player, and we get a wee flavour of what lies ahead, not only for whatever match it is that we have around the corner. In this case, it's an away trip to St Mirren, but at this time of the season, most importantly, we are looking for updates regarding our transfer policy, our transfer involvement, what we're doing, what we might be able to expect coming in the door, is anyone leaving? And I think that is exactly what we as fans right now, with just over a week before that transfer window shuts, that is the only updates that we are bothered about at this time. So before we get round to what the manager was talking about, wee bit of housekeeping that we always do here. If you're new to the channel, then welcome. If you're a returning subscriber, then thank you very much for your continued support. If you want to help out this channel, it only takes 2 seconds to do, and we greatly appreciate it. Make sure you hit the subscribe icon. Every time we go live, every time we do an upload like this, you'll get notified. You'll never miss a beat. If you want to go one further, give it a wee thumbs up. If you like what you see and you like what you hear, then make sure you do that. And if you want to share it out there, it just helps get more eyes in the community on the channel and helps to grow it. You can also support us by way of donation. If you want to become a member, you can. It's completely optional. It is $1.99. It doesn't get you any free content. Everything that we do is and will continue to be 100% free, but it just helps with the run of the channel, because even though everything that we put out costs you absolutely nothing, doing this whole gig here, well, that costs us something, and it just helps with that. If you want to connect with us elsewhere on social media, you can. We are on X at CWPod1888. Well, that's it. That's the wee bit of housekeeping out of the way. So, as we always say here on the channel, let's get down to business, because the manager had his press conference today. It was a good, pretty in-depth 30 minutes or so that Brendan Rodgers in front of the camera. We also saw the captain, Cal McGregor, also there as well. Not too much, in my opinion, to really go into with regards to what Cal McGregor was talking about. Pretty much just echoing the general sentiment that the manager is. So everything that Brendan Rodgers has covered, you know, that Cal McGregor has laid mention to it also. So the key points were, he was asked quite a lot of questions. There was also a wee bit of pressing around links, transfer rumours, potential outgoings, what we were wanting as a club to move forward, what he was expecting. And I think it maybe puts some fans' minds to rest. Let us know what you thought at the end of it, because I've seen a lot of people that have sort of raised concerns over some of the language that Brendan Rodgers has used, and more recently in these sort of wee press conferences when he's been asked. Very much at the early stages, it was always, I expect. It was always very, I expect, I want, this is what I'm expecting, this is what I think we will do, this is what we need to do. And there was a slight change at times to, hopefully, I hope, that kind of language, and people were getting probably rightfully concerned around about that, and maybe they were getting this idea or this feeling that perhaps the manager was bending it in the knee a little bit. He was maybe giving in it, and we could maybe, you know, perhaps he was trying to adjust our expectations. However, it seems as if it's been a wee bit of a return to form today with his press conference, back to bit more positive, shall we say. So there's a mixed bag. We'll cover the main points and you can have your own conclusions from that. So when he was asked firstly about the squad and where we're at, a couple of things that he did say was, firstly, that he was very happy with the overall quality of the squad. Of course, he's a manager. I think perhaps he maybe learned from last season, whenever we were riding the crest of the wave. We were 6-7 points ahead in the league with, let's face it, a average squad that hadn't massively changed. He'd bought a lot of sort of belief in the players. They had them firing all cylinders, as he says. But then, as it started to get near the transfer window, and he started mentioning more about, we need better players, we need better quality, we need better options, perhaps that maybe eroded away a wee bit at the faith that he'd built up amongst the team. So I think, looking at this, yeah, you can see that there's a better overall quality in terms of how we're playing. The squad itself, is it weaker in your opinion? Is it roughly about the same? For me, I would say you could argue that Schmeichel's certainly a upgrade in quality on Joe Hart, but we're pretty much where we were. There's not too much of a change there to say really that there's an overall step up in quality. No, I don't think so. But maybe he's minded his P's and Q's, maybe remembering that the action that had on the players. And whilst we are on top, whilst we appear to be fully bought in and playing, you've got to keep positive, haven't you? So he said that he is happy with the overall quality, but he then caveats that because he says that he recognises that as we hit September and we get a heavy schedule, that's when we need further quality to add to it. So he's not playing down any of the guys that are currently in situ, but he's certainly laying mention to the fact that we need that wee bit more. Some of the things that he said I thought were interesting was he says that if we want to improve as a club, then we need to improve the quality of the squad. A lot of the way that he was talking today, it was very much around his ambitions, his mindset and what he wants. He never directly said that those upstairs echo his vision or our vision that we share with the manager as fans and our expectations and what we want to see from the club moving forward. But he did continually drop in little phrases like that to say that it's fine being the best in your small pond, but if you want to level up, you want to improve and go further as a footballing club, we need to improve on the squad. And he also says that he can see the current players that he has, there's a marked improvement in the overall ability, play, things are joining up for him. And as Asa says, we can see that as well. We've covered this now with the opening season. We've covered it during the pre-season, and you can undoubtedly see that there is a vast improvement in the way that we play, but that should never be enough. You should never just settle from, well, we've turned a corner, we'll be all plain sailing from there, because it is a long season. There's the 2 cup tournaments domestically, there's the league, then there's the Champions League, then there's obviously internationals, and with some of their Asian players as well, we've obviously got to think about their schedules for internationals where they can disappear as well. So there's many variables that we need to do to add on it. One thing that it was then waded into was very much what you can say to the fans with regards to our concerns. The fans have been very concerned. They're wanting to see some movement. There's been little to no sort of improvements on the squad. We've got 2 guys in, Ida, Bernardo. They were already in situ. What are we doing to get more people in, Brendan? What's happening there? And can you understand the level of frustration? He echoed that and says very much telling us what we already knew, that he is very much like ourselves. He shares the same ambitions, he has the same desires, he has the same level of expectancy, and he has the same vision. He says the fans are the exact same as me. I want us to improve. I understand that they want us to improve, and we must have a high bar as a football club. Again, echoing, we need to look beyond simply having constant domestic success. That's never going to quench our thirst for going further by developing as a football club, performing in Europe. It's fine, it's good having those bragging rights, if you will, at the domestic level, but like ourselves as fans, the manager is also saying, I completely understand that because I want that as well. I'm pushing for that, constantly pushing, constantly asking the questions. And one thing that he says again, coming back to Europe, that cast your mind back to when he first came in the door, when he returned, and he says about how we want to improve and try and give a better account of ourselves in the Champions League. He actually went one further a wee bit today, a bit more direct, where he says that he wants us to be able to compete, not just participate, not just turn up, get that money, say thank you very much, and see how it goes. And that is, I'm sure, a sentiment that you will 100% agree with, because we've been saying this as fans on this podcast, in the comments section, online and social media. I see it every single day. Fans are sick and tired of being also-rans. Now, the manager also goes on and says about participating and competing. What is the expectation level of competing? Well, like ourselves, he's not foolish, is he? He's not expecting us to be hitting semi-finals, quarter-finals, finals, winning the thing, for crying out loud. He's saying, you know, with the new format, with the new league format, there is absolutely no reason why we can't be looking at gaining some wins, gaining some points, getting into that next phase out with the group stage. That, I'm sure, will agree. It's been so long since we've actually got to that phase that in itself would be a level of improvement, and certainly showing that you can compete because it says 8 games, new format, you would be able to say quite safely, yep, we were able to show that we can compete, and you can maybe get those other 2 games, and potentially, with the luck of the draw, if you will, which Celtic historically have never been blessed with, but let's hope for better this year. You could get yourself another 2 games in. Who knows what could go on before that? But as the manager says, coming full circle and bringing it round. These things are all dependent on that requirement to improve what we have, to get a certain level of player, that wee extra sprinkling of overall quality that's going to level us up. And he said that as well when he was asked about signings. He was asked about, you've mentioned the fan concerns, you share that, the frustration, but can we go and explain somehow, how does the system work? What's the sort of process, if you will? Why is it that we're not seeing these players coming in? And again, he echoes some things that we've heard before with regards to the timing of signings. He says sometimes you just simply miss out on players. They just slip past you and you don't even know they're there. But he also mentioned about affordability and also availability. What was he meaning by that? Well, he's always been a great advocate of waiting to the latter stages, i.e. where we find ourselves right now, that sort of last week. And his wording was that he expects it to be a big 7 days ahead for us. He did mention when there's teams and there's players available, there are guys who are, if they're off a certain quality, certainly what Celtic are looking for, good word quality continually features in his vocabulary. He's saying when you have a player of a certain quality, they will always, more often than not, go away and do their pre-season with whatever team that they're at. He also mentioned the Asian market again, saying that's not one that we've forgot about. So that might be something to look at as well. We've not certainly had many links to players out the Asian market, but again, it just shows that we've still got that in our mind and the way we're thinking, and possibly our scouting network, if we do have one indeed. But he's mentioned that these players tend to go away. Managers really want to assess what they've got, and then they will usually make a latish decision on where their future lies. So to that end, that's where the availability comes in. With regards to the affordability, he also mentioned that, money is a factor. And this comes back to what the captain was asked, where he kind of said a wee bit more direct, just paraphrasing here, that sometimes when selling clubs know that you are sitting on a wealth of riches, you have a lot in the bank, you're in a position where you don't necessarily need to sell, that can influence and affect how much they ask for their players. That was fired back at the manager. He didn't disagree with it, but he didn't fully say, 100%, that's the way I think as well. But what he did say is, it can at times, sometimes money can affect the price, but not all the time. There will always be a price range for a certain player. We will assess that. We know that to get a certain level of quality, there comes a certain price cash amount attached to that. That's where we would then assess that and think, is that fair? Is it possibly a little bit higher than we were anticipating for? But whatever that offset is, do we still think that there is value for money in that player? Yeah, that's what he was saying. He says sometimes it's not as easy as we as fans think. Just go out there and spend the money, and not always spending money guarantees you quality. Wade mentioned that previously we have went out and got guys at £1 million, £2 million and sold them on for millions. Says that's the dream. That's what every manager, every club would love to do. But I've been in this business long enough that quite simply, that's not always how it works. He did then caveat that again to say, I am not against signing guys in that bracket, £1 million, £2 million, because we've seen time and time again that there can be successes there. However, rather than just reinforcing the squad, basically squad filler, padding it out, if you will, I want that extra bit of quality. And that comes back to when he was saying at the start of the window, when he was asked, why have you not had players in? He says, well, by now I could have had 7 or 8 players in, probably at that price range as he's saying, but it's about quantity over quality. And that was a recurring theme that he's saying there, that he wants to have the right player, and he understands that sometimes it's not as easy as just going out and throwing the money at it. There is many moving parts in a deal. It could be the selling club's expectation, it could be what the player wants, and ultimately as well what we want. So very much he was, I wouldn't say sitting on the fence. He was quite diplomatic about it. He wasn't coming out and, shouting at the moon saying, "Give me the players now, we've got the money." He was very level-headed about it. He did say, however, as well, that we will be judged at the end of this window. And again, we as fans, he says, patience is something that you need to have. That can be quite frustrating for ourselves. Look, I've come on here, many a times during the summer period, I've really aired my gripes very, very vocally, and I've seen it out there, I've seen it in the comments. But he says patience is the key, and sometimes you've just got to trust it. He was confident, that was his word, he was confident that we can improve the squad, not confident that we will improve the squad. I thought in terms of wording that, I don't think that was great. It was very generic. It was very wishy-washy. Of course, we can develop the squad. I was looking more for we will, as we've seen before. And that comes back to what I said there at the top of the show, where there's been this little just tweaks in the way that he's been speaking at times, where it's went from expectation and confident to hopeful. So I'm hopeful that is just reading into it far too much, and there's actually some stuff going on. What he did say is, and this is quite surprising, maybe to some, he was preaching and singing the praises of the people upstairs who are, I quote, working tirelessly. Easier for me to say, isn't it? They've been working tirelessly for months, apparently. We were asked, who is the scouting team, the recruitment team? And it was non-committal. There was no actual names given. There was no, this person's in charge of that, they're in charge of this. He wrapped it up in a nice sort of easy bow and says, these unnamed people are working behind the scenes continually. And essentially they go out, they identify the players, and then they will come to him, they'll present them, and he will sign off on it. But he then went on to say that after this window, this is something that we'll need to look at that department. We'll need to look at where we're at with that and reevaluate it. Undertones of, we'll just rip it right up and start again. So it sounds very similar to what we were hearing from him when he first came in, where obviously it was Lowell Jr. and his cronies, but it sounded as if there was unnamed people in this case now who are apparently doing the work and identifying targets and handing them to him, and he's signing off on them. Keep that in mind, because I think that will be very interesting, because he did say that he had signed off on a lot of these players that were presented, or maybe further down the line, your Yangs, Kwon, you could go as far as even saying guys like Lager Bielka, Norotsky, and then at times he maybe reneged on those a little bit and says those were so far down the line. So this time he's saying I'm signing off on them, so bear that in mind, and that's something worth thinking about further down the line. We see what we're actually going to get. He was asked again in terms of players potentially getting out, and he says that he doesn't expect to lose multiple players, although again, understanding with the situation with O'Reilly, for example, every player has their price. He was asked and pressed on a little bit about any update with O'Reilly, because there was various sources saying that that was going to be almost imminent. 24 to 48 hours, as we reported the other day. We saw the videos today from training, O'Reilly in training, Hatate in training, Kyogo in training, all smiles, all positive. And he made a light off it and says, if we listened and paid attention to every single rumour, then I'd be getting myself prepared for a 5-a-side game this weekend rather than an 11-a-side Premier League game against St Mirren. He was also asked with regards to the Kyogo situation. Now, if you've been sort of paying attention online, you'll see that there was a quote from Pep Guardiola where he was asked, would you be interested in this player? Are we going to see any other players coming in? And he pretty much shot it down and says that he didn't expect Man City to be making any further signings during this window, which maybe threw some water on those flames there and calmed that sort of worry that we have as fans, that we might have to look at getting a real key player for us over the past couple of seasons, leaving us at a crucial time in the window with very little time to try and replace that player. Now, what I would say about that, he says it's just gossip, rumours, speculation, and as it stands at the moment, the status quo remains. O'Reilly, Hatate, Kyogo, everyone else, they're in training, they're preparing for a game at the weekend, and it looks as if we will probably see all these guys in the squad at the weekend. Potentially, again, if we're being honest with ourselves, I'd imagine that's probably going to be Matt O'Reilly's last game at Celtic. Hopefully not. Hopefully there's a twist in this tale and he stays around, and it's maybe, as I said, even January or the summer that we eventually part ways with O'Reilly. But again, if you want to be the sort of amateur detective, it'll be interesting to see if he plays. I'm sure, as he said, the manager mentioned as well, that he's been a consummate professional, always comes in, always does his work, always gives 100%. No signs that he's been adversely affected by any rumours, and he'd expect that to continue. We're talking about at the end of the game. Usually there's a clue, isn't there? You see the way that they react with their teammates, going to the fans, that kind of stuff. That maybe could give us a sign as to how likely this deal is, and indeed how close this deal is, if that's something that is going to be happening. So we'll keep an eye on that. But in terms of what Guardiola said and what the manager says, as I says, both these guys, professional managers, long in the tooth, long in the game, they know how to mind their bedside manner. They know what to say, they know what not to say. And I wouldn't expect anyone to turn around and say, yeah, you know what, we're definitely interested. I mean, Man City have been on the ball and they're wanting to sell him. That's not how it works. That's just, there could be something in the background. We've just got to take these things at face value. The manager's saying no movement, no update. And he says, unless something develops and I am told otherwise, we're preparing for the weekend. Again, take that at face value, isn't it? Because these things operate really, really quickly. So it could literally be that was what was being said early afternoon today. And by the time we hit now, there could be an email that's dropped onto his lap saying this is what's going down. So we take that as it comes. He was then asked about, again, frustrations. What's your frustration? How do you balance your ambition versus your frustrations when you feel like you're maybe not getting what you're looking for, what you're desiring to improve your squad? And I thought the wording in this was interesting as well, and it maybe shows that he is here for the long run first and foremost. Maybe put out any rumours that, you know, Brendan would walk if he doesn't get his own way. He's getting fed up of getting the piss taken out of him like us fans, yada, 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 etc., etc. Now, what he said is, I've been here before and I can manage it a lot better now than I could then. This is the club that I want to be at. This is the club that I want to improve. This is the club that I want to develop and have the best intentions at heart with. So, again, if you want to read into that, you can take that and say, that's him being beaten down. You know, the fight's been knocked out of Brendan. I don't believe that for a second. But I think what he's essentially saying is I understand the process. Yes, we as fans want. Me as a manager will always want. Sometimes you can't get it. There is reasons for that. And basically, I just took that as, I expect to get X, Y, and Z, but if I don't get everything that I want, then I'm not going to start, you know, throwing the toys at the palm. I'm not going to start causing a commotion. And ultimately, as we've seen, it was his undoing the last time where he did go. Now, I think this situation looks slightly different. I think whenever he initially left the first time round, what he was getting in was significantly worse than what we're getting here. Yeah, do you know what? Last season, not fantastic. But if we look recently, Kuhn, Bernardo, Schmeichel, Ida, the markup is a lot better. The optic, if you will, of what he's getting isn't mind-blowing, but it's better than what he was getting at the latter stages when he was fed up, disenfranchised, disillusioned, and eventually left Celtic. So I think the two things are different, and we'll get something right in the middle ground. Again, came round to that on talking about money, talking about finances, how that our finances are strong and that can influence the selling teams. He says that we have great business minds upstairs in the upstairs department. However, I am of a footballing mind. I am only focused on the footballing side. And again, that was incredibly refreshing to hear. He's a football manager. We say time and time again, the badge says the Celtic Football Club 1888, not Celtic Football Enterprises. It's two different things. And you and I, will be honest, as much as we are bored off the board, so to speak, and how the lack of investment, lack of ambition for the footballing side of things, we can agree that we are run fantastically as a business, but it's finding that balance, isn't it? It's about finding the growth, the sustainability, while still taking care of business, your bread and butter. What brings the money in is the product, because we've lived through it, the 90s and everything else. When the product is garbage, the attraction's not there, the engagement's not there, and all the business, the sponsorships, the fan purchasing, the merchandise, the attendances, they all fall away. So you've got to find that middle ground, and I'm pretty sure that is what he's alluding to that. So finally, to touch on a couple of players, he was asked about, is there any movement? And his words were maybe a wee bit concerning, was that there was nothing far down the line, nothing imminent. But again, that could simply be just batting away rumour, not wanting, because as we've covered, there's a couple of players who have been linked that I'm going to profile in a couple of minutes' time. Maybe he's just keeping it quiet, keeping the cards close to the chest, and it could be that wee surprise signing that we always like. We all know, like, one of those type of signs, don't we? When there's been nothing, then boom, there you go. There's a tweet goes out, or there's a player standing, there's a picture, a wee video, something gets fired out there. Those are the best signings, the ones that just come out of nowhere. And hopefully that is what we're doing. But his words, but there was nothing far down the line, nothing concrete in the works. Was it, again, is that maybe just bedside manner? But he was asked about a couple of our own players, talking about the links there, talking about maybe folk moving on. And certainly one of the most recent was Lagerbielke, because as we all know, it was Heerenveen were coming in and they were interested in taking him on a loan, just simply a straight up season-long loan. But once again, Lech, who have been very interested in him, keep on coming around, they keep on returning. They're wanting to jump in once again and take advantage of that, because they want to take him on loan, but with a firm option to buy. I think we'll all agree that if you're going to get guys like this out there, that one is the best option. Loan with an option to buy, or if you can, an obligation to buy. Just trying to make sure that you're going to not just eternally be loaning people out. You want to see some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. You want to see some sort of end game, or even just try and negotiate a fee. If it means chipping that down a wee bit to get them off the books, then certainly that's one that we need to be looking to do. He praised Lagerbielke. He says it's been a difficult move for him. It's not quite worked out for him, but he is ever the professional player. He comes in, he works hard, he's determined, he's never ever thrown his toys at the pram. He's always gave it 100%. And he said that he deserves a move. He deserves a move, and he needs to be playing regular. However, he's just not in his plans. So I think, again, from the human aspect of our manager, very good to see that he's still trying to have decent relations with it. And surely that as well can only help you get these players out the door. If they're still getting treated properly, if they're still getting, the arm put round them and told, well done, mate, etc., etc., but I think this is the best for you, then that can eat into their mindsets, because there's two types of players, isn't there? There's those who continually work, try to improve, and want to play football. And there's other ones that's just the shutters up. Nah, not doing it. I'll just collect my wage. I don't care. They'll be exiled to the B team, the reserves, whatever it may well be. They'll sit there for eternity and collect their wage. So it's good to see the manager still having a relationship with people, being honest with them, but still helping them to try and develop as players, to try and get them the best move possible for them. And that then comes back to another guy who's Mikey Johnson. He says, with regards to any potential move for Mikey Johnson, we've just got to take it as it comes. That's essentially what the message from Brendan Rodgers was there, saying that he's a very talented player. He's had troubles with his injuries. Talked about how he went down south, he went to West Brom and really smashed it, but it hasn't really quite worked out for him. Again, we've seen the links. There's talk about Burnley, there's talk about Sheffield United with a potential link to one coming our way, which we'll get into as well. So again, these are two players that I would expect to see some sort of movement on during this last week of the transfer window. And definitely Lagerbielke, it sounds as if that's all but done, and that'll be another centre back off the books, because we saw Kobayashi has departed on a permanent contract again. I think that's best for all parties. And again, he was getting some time during the pre-season, but that was really just to get him up to standard. And again, as the manager said, and as I've demonstrated there, still giving these guys a chance, still giving them a wee bit of time and a bit of investment to make them moving on that bit easier. Now, again, coming back full circle to the signings and talking about the striking situation, very, very interesting. That kind of looped into the Kyogo situation, where he says we've got Kyogo, we've got Ida. And initially he had said, once again, I wanted the third striker to be an in-house guy, a young up-and-coming youth prospect who's already in-house. He says, but Maeda has, thrown a spanner into the works, if you will, because he has shown, he's demonstrated that he can be played as a striker. And again, mentioned that international, that's how he's played. What he did say as well was, and I think we've always says that undoubtedly, if we were to lose Kyogo for talking's sake, that we would definitely need to get a other top quality striker in, but we'd always want that third one as well. Sounds as if the manager's gone back on that. And again, this might buy into frustration because we're like, with all this money we've got, why not? But he says we could buy someone who was younger, but the priorities lie elsewhere. So that pretty much to me sounds as if, unless something falls onto our lap that's going to be a very appealing price point, obviously, or proposition with like a loan or something like that, it doesn't to me sound as if we can expect to be getting in another striker. Certainly not as long as Kyogo and Idah are definitely there. It looks as if it's going to be plan C, if you will, is going to be Maeda through the middle. We'll see how that one goes. The manager praised him about how he can develop and how that he expects him to score more goals this season. He said a good start to the season. Yeah, do you know what? See if we could be getting maybe 12 to 15 goals out of Maeda as a third choice striker, stroke as a winger. For me, I think that's a decent return. Maybe you should be expecting a wee bit more, but still right in the pocket of that 12 to 15. For me, at least, I think that would be a positive return on it. And finally, he did say that we are looking at a centre-back, and we will be looking at a centre-back regardless how the Lagerbielke situation pans out, and I'm sure that we'll agree there. That we didn't no mention of Nawrocki. It's all been quiet on the Western Front with regards to Miovski. So sorry, not Miovski, Nawrocki. But that's so. It looks as if he's probably going to be given some level of a chance to work his way back into the team. There's obviously Scales there. There's obviously Welsh as well. Injury issues here and there. It's all went quiet on any interest in Welsh. So at this moment in time, it looks as if we're going to have Scales, Welsh, Nawrocki and CCV plus one other, which will be interesting to get on to. So without further ado, let's discuss a couple of the other things that have came out. Firstly as well was the safety net and stuff. We've seen it. You've got the pictures here for you. This is the new setup at the away end. This was all around the ticket allocations when all Celtic came out. They said that Rangers hadn't done their side of the bargain, if you will. Celtic have done all the external works to the ground. They've done the safety net. And I believe that this is going to be a permanent fixture. It's going to be put in and it's going to stay there. We'll see how that one pans out. As you have a look at it, it looks like there's some sort of thick weave that goes through there. I'd imagine that you'll probably still get some sort of steward and perhaps police, depending on the game, up the line off that to just create an extra little layer of a divide, because who knows what this is made of, but you would probably find some idiots trying to burn it or doing something like that. So for the integrity of that, you'd probably expect that as well. But Celtic have done their bit with that, and that's how that looks for those who are wondering what it is. We'll look at the other side of the city, and they have finally decided to apply for their planning permission for it. So yeah, do you know what? It shows they were behind. They weren't quite on time with it with Celtic. Perfectly within our rights, as we say. So yeah, that's not going to be until the third and fourth games where we have to go each other stadiums. But as far as Celtic, there it is. We've got it in place. It is ready to rock. It is ready to go. In terms of links, the big one, Josh mentioned the other day when he was on with us, and it sort of ticked away, was this chap here, which is Mathias Bogus. And as we always say in Celtic World Order, who is he? What's he doing myself? What do we know about him? Well, Mathias Bogus, quite an interesting one. And I'm quite surprised, to be honest, with regards to the fee that's getting bandied about for this young chap. It's a 23-year-old Polish attacking midfielder who can also be like a kind of pseudo striker, but he is mainly a attacking midfielder out on the wing type of guy. Currently at LAFC in MLS, but he's been there since the 22-23 season. In terms of his performances for them, he's had 75 appearances in total, scoring 21 goals and chipping in with 14 assists. You can go online, you can do the usual YouTube troll and see his video highlights. Looks good on the eye. However, there's many people who have reservations over the overall standard of that league. Again, as I always say, take it as you find it. you can only beat what's put in front of you. You can only perform against what's put in front of you. And certainly he is right up there in terms of his return, in terms of how he is doing for early in the MLS. He's also had some experience in Ibiza in the second tier of Spain. He was also notably on Leeds United's books. However, it didn't quite work out for him. He had a spattering of first team appearances, very, very few to say the least, but mainly their second tier. He was also, in total, he's had 185 career appearances at senior level, 34 goals, 23 assists, and he is also currently part of the Polish under-21 squad with 18 caps and 4 goals. Now, the fee, as I say, is quite surprising, certainly for me, because they're talking circa £7 million for Mateusz Bogusz. Certainly that is a very rich fee considering the league that he's coming from. Now, again, this comes back to what the manager says about our players. Put a value on the player, not the league. So we can't be, preaching about our players and their values, playing in an average league and then arguing about that. But I did think £7 million was certainly quite a fair whack for him. But as I say, looking at the optics, looking at his stats, looking at his profile, looking at those wee videos that you can see, for me at least, he looks very, very promising. And I am, I'll judge a guy as soon as he comes in the door. But if you're willing to pay that amount of money and everything that I've just covered that the manager's mentioned, if you're willing to stump up that kind of cash, you obviously see the value in him. And also, as the manager says, if he's ultimately rolling the roost over these players, signing off on them and being involved in that process, well, I hate saying trust the process, but you've got to expect the manager to know what he wants, know what's going to fit his system, and have an eye for a player, because Nat Phillips aside, any players that he has brought in that have had his DNA, his fingerprints on them, well, they've been very successful so far. So again, I'm willing to take this one at face value, and I think, we should probably maybe get excited about that. Similarly, as I say, is with the guys like Arnie Engels, if that's one again, £7 million seems to be the in vogue price of players that Celtic are linked with. If he thinks the value's in that, one to go for. Other name here that's involved for ourselves, and this comes back to the Mikey Johnson situation. This is Austin Trusty. He is a centre half. That could be that one centre half that Celtic were wanting to identify that the manager was talking about. But here's the kicker, because he can play centre half at the left side, but he can also play at left back. Now, if we know Celtic, they like a bargain, don't they? They like a wee 2-for-1 deal, kill two birds with one stone, a utility man at the back. So, again, who's Austin Trusty? What do we know of him? 26-year-old, USA internationalist, again with a pinch of salt, only 2 USA caps, but he has been represented. Currently at Sheffield United, where he's been since 2023, where he had 35 appearances. Obviously, he's also been on the books at Arsenal. Certainly didn't work out for him, but still they saw enough in him to take him on board. He's also had some experience with Birmingham, where he's had 48 appearances, and he's also been in the MLS with Colorado and Philadelphia. In total, well seasoned, 251 senior career appearances. He's a defender, so it's not going to be record-breaking, but 8 goals and 4 assists during that time. The fee hasn't necessarily been mentioned. The belief is that it could be anywhere between £3 to £4 million. However, this is the big kicker. Sheffield United are supposedly one of many teams who are interested in Mikey Johnson. So could that be something like a direct swap? One going one way, one coming the other way, or a bit of Mikey Johnson plus cash? Because even though Mikey Johnson went down south and he showed a bit of promise, his overall fee, what people were anticipating realistically that we could get for him, was around about that £5 million. Now, when he was right on fire, I'll be honest, I was on here talking about it as well. Folk were saying Championship, the kind of money you could maybe look for £8+ million. But I think in the fullness of time, being realistic, you're probably talking maybe around about a maximum of £5 million for Mikey Johnson. That's solely based on the amount of time that he's got left on his contract and that wee purple patch that he had down south where he was able to show his skills and show what he's got. So if those are kind of comparable in the amount of money that they've got value on them, then yeah, it could be one going, one coming the other way, or as I say, player plus a nominal amount of cash. Interesting one there. Again, played for Sheffield United in that Premier League season. It was an absolute disaster. But hey, look, you've got to take that as you find it. Sheffield United, were absolutely tragic across the board, whether it was the strikers, the midfielders, defenders. Their entire team was just a complete and utter shambles. So when you're playing against that level of quality, when you're literally getting into a gunfight with a penknife, you're going to be in the sore end of it. And fortunately for him, he's a defender. Yeah, and he was on the end of that absolutely horrendous goal record and conceded goals. But it's the Premier League, as I say, isn't it? You're playing for a far, far, far less quality team. You're under-equipped for what they were going up against. So I do not hold that against him, because he was very highly thought of when he was at Birmingham, and they had a good stint there. Again, take the Championship as you want to. Find that as a quality, but it's undoubtedly a level up from the Scottish Premier League, in my opinion. So one to keep an eye on, certainly one I wouldn't be against getting in the door. Now, finally, I'll put a wee tweet and we discussed this as well, and it comes back to just wrap up in a bow what we're talking about here on the show with regards to the finances. Now, the manager says that, yep, we've had all these finances, but it doesn't mean because you've got it that it's going to make it easier to spend. And it comes back to, why are we frustrated as fans? Well, we're desperately looking for something tangible. We're looking for those players to come in to add that quality, to show that our ambitions, that the manager's ambitions are being matched by those people who work upstairs, who he has told us are brilliant at what they do. Let's see them earn their crust by getting those players on the pitch. And the frustration just grew a little bit as, yesterday, on top of the new third kit that's come out, well, we've got another leisure wear items coming out, another very highly expensive batch of Adidas branded clothing. And I saw a lot of backlash with regards to this. They'll announce a player rather than a top type of thing. And I can understand that. And we put a wee thread about that on it. And you can see why we're understanding and why we're pretty annoyed, because, again, I keep on saying this, but just to snapshot it and, wrap it up my bow, from the 23-24 season, we were about £28 million in profit from player trading. So far, we've spent around 13 million. That leaves you with £15 million. If you go and inevitably sell O'Reilly, 25 plus, there's 40 million. Then the Champions League, then the tickets, everything else in between. God forbid if we were to sell Kyogo, 20 million. You need to start reinvesting this. And I thought to myself, I saw one from Mark Kearney, who's off the Boise Bus, former guy that I used to be on the show with there. Check him out. He put out a very good point where he says, from this season alone, Celtic have tweeted about 77 different items of clothing for the start of the season. And I just found that absolutely mind-blowing. So me, being a little bit OCD, I went onto the website and I done a count. And on the Celtic website, there is currently over 140 unique items of Celtic branded Adidas merchandise. Everything from tops, training tops, polo tops, golf, slippers, trainers, sliders, socks, you name it. That doesn't even include all the Celtic in-house branded stuff. So yes, fans should be getting annoyed that we're constantly getting merchandise rammed down our throat when all the tweets that we want to see is somebody with a scarf above their head. As the week comes in, as the manager says, it's going to be a very busy 7 days for Celtic, but it's not only going to be a very busy 7 days, it is going to be a very pivotal 7 days for Celtic. Much like we said time and time over, this will show you the measure of our ambitions. The manager somewhat tried to caveat it, alleviate that a little bit and say sometimes it just doesn't work out. He didn't want to give numbers because he didn't want to say I need 4 players and then we go and get 2 and we get caught out. He doesn't want to commit to those kind of games, but he constantly echoed that we need quality in the door. 100% we need quality in the door. This is going to be the testing ground. This is going to be make or break, in my opinion, for Celtic. Matt O'Reilly, I expect him to leave not disastrous as long as you reinvest and you bring in something of quality. I don't expect Hatate to go. I really don't. Despite apparent links, I don't expect Carter Vickers to go. Non-negotiable, Carter Vickers will not go. Hatate, I don't expect him to go. Kyogo, if Man City were genuine, can you blame him? I would absolutely expect him to go if Man City were actually interested in him. However, again, taking it at face value, if we take what that Pep Guardiola quote was, we take what Rodgers says, you wouldn't expect him to go, but stranger things have happened. So I'm only really expecting us to lose one key player, Matt O'Reilly. We're starting to get these peripheral guys coming out, and I would like to think I'm going to try and be positive. I'm going to say 4 players, 4 quality players. Matt O'Reilly going out, someone at the back, midfielder, possibly Bogus, hopefully someone like Engels, and then maybe alone. I'm going to say 4 players. That's what I think. Are they going to be 4 players of quality? This is where these guys that are upstairs that are supposedly brilliant at what they do should be earning their wage, because we've all seen those spreadsheets. We've all seen the big fat wages and the fatter bonuses that they're getting. Earn that by not having a good bank balance. Earn that by, as I say, is finding the mid-ground, finding the balance, putting quality out on the pitch, because this is make or break. We are in a strong position with the better side, with the better squad, we've got the better manager, we've got the better finances, and we have also a better chance getting into the Champions League. 8 games, 4 of which will be teams who are quote-unquote off our standard, because that's the way the new league format works, to give you a fighting chance to play against teams that are more on your level, to accumulate more points, to try and bridge that gap between the elite teams winning everything and the lower teams never getting over the line. We need to tool up for this. We need to make sure that we're doing it. The game against St Mirren at the weekend, what we've got, more than enough quality in the bag to deal with that. But as the manager says, it's fine being the best domestically. Ambition, levelling up. If we want to develop as a club, we need to look beyond that. So anyway, thanks again for joining us. That was the evening update. A lot to take in there. A wee bit longer than perhaps I've expected or anticipated, but as you know, when we start talking about Celtic, then you can get down the rabbit hole and you could go on for hours and hours and hours. I won't keep you any longer. So again, thank you for taking the time to come back to Celtic World Order. It is always appreciated. There's a game around the corner against St Mirren. We'll be here to cover that. We preview of it and a wee look at, which is hopefully going to be another comfortable win for Celtic come the end of Sunday. So anyway, until the next time, take care of yourself and always hail, hail.
The following announcement has been paid for by the Celtic World.